All right, we are rolling. Please find a comfortable seat for stillness, comfortable posture. Hmm. As we endeavor to make conscious our inner knowing, there's a lot of information. So much of what we interact with in our world is just this fabric, this construct of our mind. We're getting this feedback from our senses. We build these labyrinths of information and knowledge. And this meditation work is to tap into something innate, something that is almost underlying, originating all this architecture in our mind, and to have that inform this architecture of our mind. My experience as I spend more time in this quiet place, recognizing this innate knowing, just existence, it shapes the architecture of my mind in a much more favorable way. And as I don't practice or neglect practice, or just before I really even knew how to practice, I remember it being just sort of a burden, the architecture of my mind, all these thoughts and ideas and problems and trying to solve problems as being quite a burden, quite a difficulty to carry around this very top heavy architecture of my mind. And so I sought a way to organize and orient the mind in a way that wasn't so difficult to bear. And so that's really, for me, why we do this, why we're practicing. As we inform it from this place of stillness that we uncover in our practice, it makes the mind much more enjoyable. We aren't trying to totally annihilate the mind, but rather let it harmoniously, more accurately render our experience. And if not, what might happen is it starts to just grow wild, grow so wild it trips itself up, tumultuous, chaotic. And at the yield, as we start to uncover this stillness, it reshapes the way we think, the way we feel. It just starts to become a part of our habit to add into our worldview, to add into our mind this inner knowing that there's quite a bit of peace available, that things are okay. And so we're just taking that time to grow our understanding. And it's not just always about pulling the reins back on our wildly growing mind, but actually turning the reins, turning this looker, this mind that seeks to understand, and turning it back away from the outward world and into the inner world. Saying, hey, mind, I've got a good thing for you to focus on. I know how you love focusing on things and learning things, studying things. You don't always study the best things. Sometimes you just like to study Facebook. You like to study Instagram. You like to study news media outlets on the television. And these things aren't always so useful as you study these things. They don't yield peace or quiet or contentment or happiness or anything useful. But if you start to look inward, you start to study inward, you start to study how your breath functions, you start to study how your thoughts arise and dissipate, as you start to study where, in fact, this sense of watching is coming from. You start to study the emotions and their origin. You start to study this subtle sense of feeling. But as you start to study these inner things, you do get more peacefulness. You do get more contentment, more spaciousness. We can directly observe that. Just a few minutes regularly, we just sit and we really start to study ourselves, uncovering what we mean by that, what we mean by me or I, what it feels like. We almost start to go underneath some of the surface emotions, like when we worry or we get anxious or we get a little scared or apprehensive. We go underneath those feelings and we start to feel into this sense of an I who feels apprehensive, anxious, etc. And as we go underneath, it starts to reshape this architecture, starts to change some of the moods and values we hold. So that's what let us endeavor to study an inner reflection. I remember the first time I had to change the tire on my car. I couldn't get the lug nuts loose. Someone had to help me. I was like, oh, I just had to use leverage and use more force than I knew. And I've had to change many tires since. I had to change someone's tire today. It went very easy because I studied it. I studied changing a tire. I didn't go to school or do research, but I studied it by doing it. First time I did it, it was a little difficult. I was nervous. I was anxious. Afraid my car was going to roll away. I was going to screw something up. But the second time, I had a little more familiarity. The third time, a little more familiarity. I don't know how many tires I've changed at this point, but it went quite quickly, quite smoothly. I studied it. In the same way we study ourselves, we study our inner sense of stillness. We have to get familiar. Albeit, hopefully, you're a little more complicated than a tire, changing a tire. But it's still the same thing. You get more comfortable, more proficient at listening to yourself, listening to these subtle energies. I remember when I first started to study my own breath, I needed all these aids and tools to help keep me focused. Now, when I study my breath, you tell me, watch my breath. I say, okay, no problem. And I can just watch my breath. I don't need any other counting or anything. I just watch it. And we learn. And just like with the tire, just like with my breath, there's still more learning. There's still more to study. Now, maybe we can grow proficient, but we're never going to say that we're masterful. And I think anyone who has ever achieved mastery, they maybe have this appreciation for endless study. And they don't look back. They don't declare themselves mastery. They just keep studying thoroughly. And that's what we're doing here. We are thoroughly studying this inner world, this inner sense of self, and seeing what's there, learning about it, developing it, understanding it. Part of this inner study, we begin with the thing that's studying. Let's call it the listener. You could call it the observer. But all learning, all studying begins with the listener. Even if you're reading information from a manual, a book, or Wikipedia, there's listening going on. You're listening to the words as you read them into your mind. So there's something that's recording, researching. We'll call it the listener. If you were seeing it with your eyes, you would maybe call it the seer. You hear it with the ears, you call it the listener. The observer takes in all the senses. So think of it as in this way. You're listening to the feelings inside. So at first, maybe you'll just listen to your breath or listen to your thoughts. Because this is an inner study, you're actually listening to the listener. You're studying the studier. that which is taking in content. See if you can recognize it. Your inner listener. As you listen and listen to the listener, see if there isn't subtle adjustments, maybe in your posture, maybe in your breath, maybe in just your mood around practice that are sort of naturally trying to shift. And just let it happen. And listen to your sense of will and effort disappear. Just listen to the tide. Listen to the rhythm of the inner world. Just let it happen. Like when a bunch of musicians get together and there's no sheet music, but your breath and your thoughts, your emotions, your body, your subtle body, they all sort of play their instruments together. You're just listening. You might find as you listen that your thoughts, they're like a cowbell player. There's just too much cowbell in this improv band. You have trouble listening to the more subtle sounds of your being. All you have to do is develop an appreciation for your breathing, an appreciation for your moods and emotions, appreciation for the way your body feels. And maybe just a little bit of an aversion to listening to the talker inside your head. Don't abandon it, just a little bit of a boundary, a little bit of space. You don't force yourself away from it. Just develop an appreciation for these other subtle qualities in the inner world. It's like learning how to savor a delicious meal rather than scarf it down. You're learning how to savor these subtle aspects of the inner world. You're learning, you're studying how to appreciate the gentle. Remember, you're not looking for some hidden treasure or some new discovery, like a distant planet. You're just uncovering. You're uncovering what's already there. Yourself. You know you're there. You know there's a listener. You know there's a being. What is it? You're really uncovering. You're making conscious what you already know. It's called understanding. And it starts with just having an appreciation for this subtle force, curiosity and intrigue. And it starts with, after that, appreciating that you like it. There's something enjoyable about this study. Once you have that, it just gets deeper and deeper. As you develop this appreciation and then this intrigue for what you're learning about this subtle, gentle parts of the inner world, you might find that you uncover something that is so subtle, so gentle, doesn't have a sound, doesn't have a shape, doesn't have a feeling. You're not even sure if you're listening to it, but it's there, loud and clear. In the Tao Te Ching, they talk about it. They'll say that the five colors line the eye, and the tones and sounds deafen the ear. I think they're alluding to this extremely subtle presence that you can't really listen to it. It's that subtle. It's that soft. It's that gentle. Maybe you can feel it a little bit. You know it somehow because it's there. It's the center of the inner world, the origin of the inner and the outer. And you take all these feelings and thoughts, sensations, effort and will, you just let this natural process occur. You follow it. When a bunch of musicians get together with no sheet music, if they're listening, something beautiful arises. See if you can still feel it, still appreciate it, still learn from it, but also listen to your breath. The deep, quiet, still self. It's still there somehow. And yet you can also learn and listen to your breath, that they are not separate, that they can coexist, that the awareness, that the listener is influenced by, is learning from the flow of breath and this very subtle presence. And then maybe you open your eyes and you see the colors and shapes. But it does not cover this very subtle center. It's still there, loud and clear. Maybe you relax your body and you relax from your effort of doing this practice. Uncovered,